Um, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions before we get started? Nope. All right. So we all know how to get participation, hopefully by now. I just want to make sure everyone remembers that those participation questions need to be done by 10 p.m. I am seeing one or two people that come to the live session, and we all appreciate that. But make sure you're doing that live session question so that you get credit and that you also get those points, which do add up. Please remember they are 25% of your grade. Did anyone have any questions about the two assignments we had yesterday? Was that simple enough? Your long-term goal, remember one or two is good. Good, good. Thanks, Mark. And also the evaluation, self-evaluation, good to go? All right, all right. Well, I guess we can go ahead and get this party started then. So, in chapter 2, we're going to piggyback off of what we learned in chapter 1, and we know, even if we didn't know, we could have deduced that you need skills in order to work at someone's company, right? We can agree to that. That's why we're here. You're here to learn technical skills and also some other employability skills that are going to be important for your respective industries. I don't think any of us will argue that there are some basic skills people expect you to have, right? Reading, writing, speaking, listening, math, and technology. Would we all agree that those are all skills that, a company wants you to have? um, you need to know how to read and write. Like, I don't think that's something any of us may not know. But you may be surprised that not everyone knows how to send an email. Not everyone knows how to write a letter formally, So we'll even discuss some of those things. Some people don't even, own a computer, right? And when you start at a company, they are making the basic assumption that you have that skill set. Even basic technology skill set, they are making the assumption that you do know. So if you know that that's something that maybe you don't have, maybe you don't know the difference between a Google workspace and a Microsoft workspace. you know Maybe you don't know that they call office products Excel, Word, PowerPoint, but they call Google Workspaces something different. You may call a Google Worksheet in Excel, and sometimes people use that interchangeably, but those are really two different platforms. Like, how many of us knew that there are cloud based Office products called Office 365, and then there are Office based products that you download onto your own servers, right? Most companies are going to be working in the cloud. And that means they're either going to be working on an Office 365 or they're going to be working on a Google Workspace. People expect you to know that, right? So they may say, "Are you familiar with the Google Suite?" And so you may say, "What do they mean by that?" They're talking about, do you know how to use Google Worksheets, Google Docs, Google presentations. They don't use those same terminologies that Microsoft uses. And so, those are little technology things that you'll want to, be made aware of. Of course, your technical skills, your hard skills is something we know you need to have, right? That's why you're in school to learn those technical skills. Those are the foundational skills that are going to be important. But also yesterday we talked about something else. What did we talk about? We talk about those soft skills, those employability skills. In chapter 2, you'll hear soft skills referred to as employability skills. You'll hear it referred to as foundational skills, workplace skills, transferable skills. Those are all soft skills, and those are things that you will transfer from one job to the next, whether you get promoted or not to the next. These are these skills that people expect you to acquire if you don't have them. You can characterize these skills into different sections like thinking skills, people skills, your own personal qualities. What do you mean by thinking skills? Well, can you think critically? Do you know how to problem solve? Uh, comp- Most managers do not like it when you bring problems to them. Does anybody like it when someone brings to them a problem? Now, I know there are some of us that consider ourselves problem solvers, so let me let me reframe that. But what type of employee would you appreciate most? Would you appreciate the employee that came to you and say, "Hey boss, I just realized that, I we have this issue. We don't have enough supplies, or one of the systems are broken, or a customer product is going to be late. But here is what I was thinking we should do." How would you feel if your employee came to you like that? You be, because this guy, this person doesn't know what you have going on your plate, right? And so if you get someone, on your team, and they know how to, not just bring you bad news, but bring you different solutions, that is what we mean by critical thinking. People appreciate that. Do you have a personality that works well with others? Do you have any people skills? Like, think about if you have a team. Anybody ever played team sports? Give me a thumbs up quick emoji if you've ever been on a team or you played team sports. Me, definitely in the military, you have to work in a team. Now, y'all know when you work on a team, in the military, we say no man left behind, right? That's an army term. Even when we would do physical training, if you see somebody struggling or they can't make it around the corner, you go back and you wrap around and you pick them up. That's what you do. You pick them up, pick them up, pick them up, right? Um, in sports, y'all know you got to be a team. You got to help each other, because if the team loses, I don't care who made you lose, you lost, right? Everybody lost, right? So, do you have those type of skill sets to be a team player? Do you know what that means? A lot of times people come to organizations and they don't know how to be team players. They'll say things like, "That's not in my job description," or "I'm gonna do what they pay me to do." Well, of course there's some truth to that, but at the end of the day, you are on a team and you do work for a company, and if the company lose, so do you, because you don't have a job. So you should want to have some type of camaraderie with people. Do you know how to get along? I just was on the phone with someone, um, you know, from work environment. And y'all know, hopefully, if y'all know, if you don't know, let me just remind you, I am the type of person that say, if you have an issue, call me. Pick up the phone. Do all y'all have my cell phone number? I think I've made that clear. Have I not made that clear? Call me. If you need something, call me, text me. People are already starting to do it. Do not send me long winded texts or long winded emails. That causes confusion. That causes confusion. I just had to, clear up something because somebody wanted to send long-winded emails. It wasn't a student. Don't worry about that. And I'm like, do not do that. That causes confusion. You can get better. You're more effective communicator when you just pick up the phone and talk to people, right? So a lot of people, common sense is not always common. Can we agree with that? And you don't may not like that type of confusion that can cause a lot of problems in a work environment. So I'm really big on communication is a skill set, believe it or not. Part of the other thing that is going to be important is how you perform at your job, right? So again, companies can't make the assumption that you have personal ethics. They want you to have personal ethics, but when you work at different institutions, they're going to have their own set of ethics. In the military, we had our own code of conduct. When I work in the banking institutions, we had a separate code of conduct for obvious reasons. If you work in a healthcare environment, they're going to have personal conduct. When I worked in a real estate, in the construction, I work for a builder. We have different codes of conduct. A lot of you guys may work with them. Why? Because there's different ethical things that could happen. And we all know that sometimes those things can be unethical and what illegal. And if you mess that up, not only can you lose your job, but you can land yourself in jail or in court. And so companies put a lot of time and energy into their code of conducts and their code of ethics because they don't want to end up in somebody's courtroom. You don't want to end up in somebody's courtroom, or even worse, right? Like the book gives an example of something that is both unethical and illegal, like discrimination, harassment, things of that nature. I come from an environment, where you can, in the military, of course, we did a lot of jokes and giving people a hard time, but y'all know that doesn't work in civilian land, right? You got to be careful what you say and do in civilian environments, and that came from, when you are under high stress environments and you're working together and you're eating together, you have a very different relationship than when you're in a corporate environment, so what the code of conduct may be in one place may be different than in another. So it's going to be very important. And so companies are going to really, really, really focus in on teaching you about their code of conduct and their code of ethics because they don't want to get in trouble and they don't want you to get in trouble. Um, Something else that you're going to come across in today's society is digital citizenship. What do we mean by that? Well, like I said, companies may have, platforms that they promote themselves on. If you're going to go work for an institution that is global or they're national or they're regional, you may have to engage with customers or contractors, whether residential, commercial, suppliers, whomever, in an online environment. You don't know if you're going to be responsible for any type of engagement. Like you just never know. You may work in an environment like if you're in the VA program, you work for a small clinic and your boss says, "Hey, we want you to also do some admin stuff and post some stuff on our website," or whatever it may be. You have to know how to engage. You also have to know what information you can share and what you can't share. If you're going to be working on contracts, maybe you're working on a government contract, and there may be things that you are privy to, but you have to make sure that you do not, expose different things. Obviously, contract information, definitely not any personal information if you're dealing with residential customers. So that's going to be very important. But also what you put out about yourself as you think about promoting yourself as an entity. Now, I know that may sound crazy, but stay with me. You know, um, y'all know Jay-Z, right? Now, I'm not into rap music, but I heard that he said that he's not a businessman, but he's the business. You understand? A lot of entertainers get this right. They know that they are the business. Does that make sense? And so they are used to promoting themselves. When you work as a professional, you are the business. You are your own entity. Is that not true? What happens when you go to a company? What are you doing? You are signing when you sign that employment contract. That offer letter is a contract. There's a reason why both parties have to sign. What are you essentially saying? You're saying, for my services rendered, you are going to pay me X amount of money. That's a contract. And so part of you doing that contract is saying that you agree to behave in a certain way, right? Because you are now becoming an agent of that institution. Does that make sense? And so, um, what you want to do is remember that you have to promote yourself as an agency of that institution. But even before you even get to that agency, when you are just out promoting yourselves, promoting your services, you are an entity. So, essentially, you're running your own business and you're the only client. Does that make sense? And you're the only client. So, as we talk to you about promoting yourself as well as talking about promoting companies online, you have to think through, okay, well, how am I promoting myself? Now, before I became a professional, maybe you used the internet very differently. Give me a thumbs up if you have any type of platform. Maybe you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Anybody have platforms? Most of us do, right? Now, I'm not going to call you out, but there could be a few of us that are very vocal on our platforms. Maybe we used to call it Twitter fingers. I don't know what they call it now, X fingers. But you may have to think through like whatever that persona was before you had a career may have to change because there are companies that will do a search on you. Miss Taylor, do you mean people are going to snoop around and try to figure out things about me? Some of them will. I had a CEO. Now, I thought she was a bit creepy, but anytime someone, you know, interviewed, she would go and try to look them up online. I thought, I mean, it didn't even matter what the position was. Like she just wanted to know. HR does it, especially if it's a person that is going to be front facing with customers. They will look you up. That is a thing, right? So you have to ask yourself, what is my digital citizen? I mean, what is my digital footprint? Am I the type of person that does a lot of online stuff? Am I the type of person that does a lot of online stuff? Um, do I have Twitter fingers? Are you one of those people that you post a lot of different things? And maybe that was okay in the past, but now that you are becoming a professional, I want you to start to think of yourself as an entity. And you can put out professionals, you can have a professional Instagram, you can have a professional X account, a professional Facebook. And I want you to start promoting yourself as that professional. Does anybody have kids? Give me show of hands. Who has kids? Who has kids? Anybody has kids? All right. So let me ask you a question. I don't know if you've heard of this, but a little while back, there was a teacher in Florida that got fired because she had a special site. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And I want to know if you had a kid, and let's say Miss Smith was your kid's sixth grade social studies teacher, and your child came to you and they ran across Mrs. Smith's site, would you have an issue with it? Willie, would you have an issue with that? Your son or
Yes,
daughter
I
came.
would.
You have an issue with that,
I
right?
would.
Anybody else would have an issue with your sixth grader running across their social studies teacher's special site? Anybody would have an issue with that? You might say, wait a minute now, I want you teaching social studies, not anything else social, right? Well, the Department of Education fired her now. She did sue, so I don't know how it's doing in the courts. But the same way that you would expect Miss Smith to conduct herself in a certain way, she's a teacher, right? Yes, she's a teacher and she works for the education people, but and maybe that is her own personal business, but nothing's personal when it's public, right? So what am I saying? There really is no such thing as a personal account if if it's public. Does that make sense? Like you have to really think through like anything that you put on the internet is not private. Because once it's on the, I don't care if they say, "Oh, this is your own personal account," unless it's inside of your home, is not. So you have to think of it in that way. You have to say, well, okay, well, the same way, you know, I may, do some search on a company, or I may do some search on, my kid's teacher, or my kid may do some search because nowadays kids are being charged with doing all kinds of projects online. You don't want them running across something crazy, right? And to that point, people don't want to have to run across something crazy on you, right? And how do you feel about that? Do you think it's fair or it's not fair, or do you think that's fair? Give me a hands up if you say you think it's fair that a company should be concerned with your online persona. Do you think that's fair, or you think is give me a thumbs up if you had a business, would you be concerned about your salespersons or your person's persona? Would that be an issue for you? Pauline, might be a little bit of an issue, right? So again, what you do private is private. Back in my day, private was real private. You didn't have an online account if you wanted to be private. To me, that's an oxymoron, right? So, but be mindful of that, right? So, what I also talked about previously is that, in addition to, yes, they want you to have good digital citizenship, like I said, they want you to know basic cloud computing. What is cloud computing? Well, like I said, those Google Suites, those Microsoft 365s, all of those things are on the cloud. Companies use cloud based systems. We're on a cloud based system right now. Microsoft Teams is a cloud based system because it's cheaper, it's more cost effective than to have an IT department everywhere. And companies may want you to know how to do it. They may want you to upload documents to the cloud, right? You are going to be doing some administration work no matter what you do. So just be mindful of that. Obviously, if there's any type of private information, proprietary information, make sure that you're not downloading or uploading anything you're not supposed to. A lot of companies are going to give you devices. I mean, many of us have had jobs before. Some of us have had jobs where they've given us, tablets, laptops, whatever. And just know this: anytime a company gives you a laptop or a tablet, don't put your personal stuff on there. I don't care how many. I don't know how many times people have gotten in trouble. I've seen people lose jobs behind that. Was even investigated years ago because I was a professor, and I had another professor, and I used to do taxes. And I used to do her taxes every year. Nobody really cared, that's whatever. I did her taxes. And then years later, I took a full time job with that company, the college, and I became like a campus director. And she still said, "Hey, Cynthia, I used to do my tax," and she taught at the college. And so she emailed me her taxes, and I'm not thinking anything of it because she lived really, really close to the campus. And she says, "Can you print them out for me?" Fast forward a couple months later, I gave my laptop back to the IT department because it was outdated and they needed to upload it. Well, it was the IT's job to scrub it to make sure there was no personal student stuff on it. And her social security number came up in their little system. Do you know they investigated me because they wanted to know how did I know that lady's social security number from something that innocent? Can you imagine? So what am I saying? Because I had downloaded her tax return and printed it out for her, they thought I had stole the lady's social security number. Now, luckily for me, I had been working at that university for many, many years. So, it all came out in the wash. But can you imagine? Like they did a whole investigation, didn't even tell me. Called her up. Do you know Miss Taylor had your social security number? So I'm telling you, like you got to be very, very careful what you do. I say don't put anything on your company's laptop. There have been times where I have had 4 or 5 laptops. I have my own personal laptop. I could have a laptop because I'm teaching at this school, teaching at that school. I'm working as a contractor at that job, and I have it. I think a couple months ago, I have 4 different laptops, and I did not put my personal information on their laptop. So especially because I was a federal contractor. So I'm definitely not putting my information on that because I work for the Department of Commerce and I had to send that laptop back. Can you imagine if I had some personal stuff on that laptop? So do not put your personal stuff on company's laptop. Be careful. Don't download anything. None of that. Don't be like, ooh, free laptop. Get your own laptop. All right. So, again, intellectual property, you don't want to be sending, your anybody or yourselves information that belongs to a company. Obviously, you don't, you want to be, mindful that, people want to protect, any type of copyright infringement or plagiarism or proprietary information. So that is very, very important. Something else that is very common nowadays too is this thing called netiquette, and that is just being mindful of how you engage online, being mindful of how you engage with customers. I know you guys are saying, well, we're in trades. Trust me, you you are going to be dealing with a lot of administration work. You are not going to be just doing technical stuff. And unfortunately, how we engage with one another through different platforms is going to be important. Um, Knowing how to send out emails and how to properly greet someone and how to speak to someone is important. And I know you guys are all saying, I know how to talk to someone, I know how to write an email. I had an hour long conversation with someone just before this class. about an email that that person thought they knew how to send out an email to. And I had to say, please, ma'am, do not send me a 5-page email ever again. So what we all think we know, sometimes we don't, right? So that is going to be important, but you'll learn those things and what the rules are for the particular organizations that you work for, right? And here's the most important thing. Once it's written down and sent, that becomes what? That becomes, legally binding. That's evidence, right? So you don't ever want to, write something that you don't want shared, something that I used to tell people a lot, this might like this little Microsoft Teams meeting that we have right now. Yes, we are being recorded, but even when you are working at an institution, you may have Teams meetings. And sometimes people get a little bit comfortable with what they say in a Teams meeting. And I'm telling you, be careful what you even say in a Teams meeting, because a lot of these Teams meetings are recorded, not just recorded like me recording them, but they have this third party system now. Microsoft did it with the intention of making things more efficient. They naturally transcribe any meeting that you have. Has anybody ever used like a Teams chat box or whatever, and not realizing that that stuff is being recorded? And the IT department, technically they can always go back through that. I've had so many coworkers that like to, ping each other and say different things. And you just have to be mindful that, like, sometimes it's better if you want to say something to someone, say it in person, right? Just don't get yourself in trouble, using those platforms and ending up having a problem. All right. So enough on that. Enough on that. Enough on that. The last thing chapter 2 talks about is this idea of certification, and this is going to be important as we start to think through our long-term goals, right? Many of you will have a lot of different certifications, and you'll learn about that as you move throughout your career. And as you move up in your career. So we're going to be talking a lot about how to utilize those as short-term steps to get to your long-term goals throughout this course. All right, my friends. So here is what you are going to be doing today, and I want to make sure we understand that, because I don't want anybody getting confused. You are going to be scheduling. If you remember, I said that you will be talking to career services. This is your first step. You're going to be setting up 2 appointments. Now, if career services tells you one, I would do whatever your career services says, but the objective is for you to have 2. The first meeting with them is to them to review your resume or to help you write one. Some of you may already have a resume. So you're going to go into your system in that assignment. Every campus is different. So make sure you look for your campus and see how your career services engage. Some of your campuses may say, pick up the phone and call me to set up your appointment. Others may say, use this system. And if you have a system, I put the link there. So just click on that link and set up an appointment. And those appointments are, you'll see it says resume appointments. It'll say mock interview appointments. You're going to make one appointment for resume and one appointment for a mock interview. For this assignment, make sure you go back and you put both appointment times. If you call and your campus is like, I'm just giving you one appointment time, I'm fine with that. Just go in and put it in. My appointment time is this time. Miss Sarah said that we'll set up another appointment at a different date, or that no date was available, and we'll set it up. That just lets me know that you are aware that you need to set up 2 appointments, okay? So lastly, um, here is your participation assignment. Please make sure you get this done by 10 o'clock. I want you to name one quality that sets you above the competition and one quality you wish you can improve upon. Why do we want you to start thinking about that? Well, as we start thinking about promoting ourselves and building our persona and what all that means, and we'll get into that next week. I want you to start to think, what are my qualities? I have to promote myself. Miss Taylor says I'm a business. How would I promote myself? So I want you to start to think about that. So one quality that sets you above the competition and one quality that you think that you can improve upon.
I don't know for
All
sure,
right?
man. Yeah, we can do that. Once you for sure. Graduate,
We
For sure, yes.
we
What's the
we
exact date
we
of
in
our
y'all
graduation?
business. Let me put you on mute. You don't want to get. We don't know what they're talking about, right, guys? All right. So, does anyone have any questions about what they need to do for their assignment or this participation? All right. With that, if we don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.